Ellen Clements is a freedom fighter and committed human rights activist who advocates a universal approach to religion. He thinks a lot of people are fed up, pretty fed up, with their pet guru and his or her pet teachings, projections, possessions, and designer spiritual lifestyles. Clements was the first American to become a Buddhist monk. For 10 years, he meditated, learned to laugh at himself, let go of certainties, and ask a lot more questions. He has had incredible experiences in the war zones of Burma and the former Yugoslavia. Today, he has gone beyond Burma and Buddhism and written a book about the Dharma life called Instinct for Freedom, Finding Liberation Through Living. It is my pleasure to welcome Ellen Clements to Studio 4. Hello.
Hello.
I should say welcome back. I haven't seen... How old were you when I first met you?
40.
And you're 41? No, I won't ask you.
It was a while back we met.
It was, for sure. And how did you wiggle your way into a monastery, a Buddhist, Burmese Buddhist monastery?
Neuroses and desire, and I was a brash artist that saw the world that was, you know, we were in genocides, the Vietnam era. I wanted to study the nature of consciousness, and I sought the pioneers in Burma who, they were the Mozarts, the Da Vincis. They were the ones who looked at the mind and said, there's a way to understand this invisible organism behind your eyes. And I was intrigued.
And when did you know you had a little bit of insight? When did you know you were kind of getting it?
I was so angry when I came in. It was a collision course with everything I wanted to avoid. No sex, no masturbation, no drinking, no parties, no driving. No love, no intimacy, no touching, nothing except just to sit in silence and be with yourself. And so after about 3 weeks of just cursing and raging about everything not being perfectly right for my enlightenment, I kind of took a big deep breath and said, you just gotta stop blaming the world for how you feel.
Why did you stay?
I fell in love. The teachers were gorgeous, the environment was stunning. Where could I explore the qualities of the human heart without desire for money or fame or material good? I could just enter my own mind and look at these different colors and say, that's the color of love, this is the color of dignity, and this is the color of freedom. It was a great joy.
In a sense, it is freedom, isn't it? If you don't have anything you have to do except sit in a position and meditate on a leaf or a shadow, I guess life becomes pretty simple.
And complex. I mean, one of the hardest things in the world is to actually sit still and be with yourself. At least that's been my experience. And so you have to really look at the ways in which you run from yourself, the inevitable desire for the next, the next, the next, the next, and the avoidance of the past, the nagging past. And to make peace with this ever-present totality called your own individual life that's configured with eternity.
What is Dharma?
Freedom.
Dharma means freedom?
It's a Sanskrit word that means freedom from the forces of fear, freedom from the forces of apathy, of cynicism, your own internal censorship. It means the opposite of the freedom to explore goodness, the freedom to explore compassion, and the freedom to take an adventure in this great, huge world called our cosmos and look around out there and see what you see.
Why are most people so afraid of adventure?
Probably the fear of losing whatever little they have, the fear of being judged, the fear of insecurity, the fear of the comfort of their sofa, their car, their friends, their toaster, their dogs, and all of a sudden they find themselves at 40, 50, 60 years old and go, wow, that was life?
That was kind of boring, wasn't it?
Well, it could be better if you set sail and pioneered in new places.
I remember you telling me the story. Either I read it in Instinct for Freedom or you told me before, the story about the first time you ever saw a horrific scene. It was a Vietnamese monk who had set himself afire.
A lot of people
in protest.
Yes, this was on the television when I was 16 years old. I had just come home after being in a tragic car accident. And there was that Vietnamese monk who had walked himself to the center of a city square in Saigon and sat in a full lotus position as the world began to see it, poured gasoline over his head and lit a match and set himself a torch. And to me, what happened, it became the ignition for like, wow, why would someone sacrifice their life to bring international awareness to this huge atrocity committed by America? And for me, I could not believe this man could sit still in the middle of this fire, and it just blew my mind.
Do you have any concept of what goes on in the mind of a suicide bomber? What is that about?
attachment to fundamentalism, orthodoxy. You know, when I really think, Fanny, of my study of Eastern mysticism and Buddhism, Catholicism, Christianity, it's like there's so much of this religious-based orthodoxy that espouses hell-based religions and equally heaven-based religions. And I'm really like, we must have a moratorium on hell and heaven and begin to see that really what we need to do as human beings is enter human existence and steward our own planet and to understand how to coexist together and overcome these fantasies of a life to come or a fear of a life in these hell realms. And so what goes on to the mind of these people? What prompts someone to commit a war and look into the face of so-called children and women and collateral damage and, wow, why am I committing myself to a war that kills people?
Mm-hmm. And we're about to do it again, I fear, in Iraq. Someone said this morning it's not if we're going into Iraq, it's when we're going into Iraq. 1 out of 7 kids in the United States can find Iraq on the map. Don't know where it is, but we better go in and annihilate the children and certainly solve some other problems along the way.
You know, my response to this is it's a very, you know, having been in Burma and the former Yugoslavia during the war, it's a complex issue to deal with violence and nonviolence and the black and white aspects of the human soul. Not everyone is free of greed and fear. Not everyone is solely wise. But my response to this upcoming invasion, so it seems, of Iraq is to invite our politicians, the Congress, the Senate, George Bush, Christian, people all over the world who make decisions on behalf of the masses, to take off their suits, to leave their office, and to go on something more than a junket. Go to some places that are oppressed by military aggression and hang out, talk to people, talk to the women who've been raped, talk to the children who've lost their eyes and their hands to war based on American-made weapons, and really get a sense of what it means to be in a circumstance of violence and tyranny. And then when you come back and you still feel so adamant that you want to kill people in the name of oil, well, you're our leaders.
I spent time this morning with Stephen Lewis, a former ambassador to the United Nations, and as you know, he's now an HIV/AIDS ambassador in a sense, and he spends a lot of time in Africa. And he is such a, I called him a devoutly angry man. He is so frustrated that 17 million women, children will die. We have the drugs to stop it, and we can't somehow give them access to the drugs. It just isn't happening. And we are in our own little worlds, which is understandable, trying to feed our own kids. And the mentality is, and it's always been thus, I have to do what I do here before I can go there. So the world consciousness factor is tough when you're just trying to make it happen in your own backyard. It's
such a profound point you're bringing up. To me, what will crack the ignorance and the fear, the narcissism and the greed of nationalism and individualism, and open the human heart to the cry of the masses? What would take a president or a prime minister for him or her to go to her or his knees and feel the embrace of this world that we live in? To me, we need an awakening of a mystical awe.
Sure. The horrific thing that happened in New York, 3,000 plus people gone. They raised $10 billion. Over 4 years in Africa with the HIV/AIDS epidemic, pandemic, they raised $2.3 billion.
Maybe we need a moratorium on male politicians.
That's a good idea. I'm for that. We can't blame it all on the boys.
Nurturing. You know, maybe we need wisdom in the places of power.
Well, we were talking about fundraising for AIDS today.